The first step in biodiesel preparation would be to weigh out the catalyst. In this experiment, I am using potassium hydroxide. Use a weighing balance to measure out 5 grams of KOH, as it will be accurate to 0.001 grams. It will ensure that your experiment is done on accurate basis. After you have weighed out the KOH, put it into the volumetric flask. Ensure that none of the constituents splash out. Then add methanol to the volumetric flask. To measure out 150 ml of methanol, I used a measuring cylinder. Now be sure that you avoid the parallax error by keeping your eye level parallel to the readings on the measuring cylinder. Now using a funnel, quickly pour all the methanol into the volumetric flask. Carry out these steps as quickly as possible, because water vapors which are present in the environment can interfere in this reaction and hamper the process. Now put a lid and start shaking it vigorously. The shaking should be done over 10 minutes, and you should ensure that all the KOH, which would be in solid form, dissolves in methanol so that methoxide is formed. After all the potassium hydroxide is dissolved in methanol, keep this solution aside and move on to the oil process. You can use any type of vegetable oil to perform this experiment. In my research I used 5 types of them, but here I am going to use only one, and that is sunflower oil. You have to pour out 400 ml of oil into the volumetric flask. Try to make your measurements accurate so that the biodiesel produced is of good quality. Now I will have to add 100 ml of the remaining oil into the volumetric flask. Once again, avoid the parallax error by keeping your eye level parallel to the readings so as to make your production wonderful. After you have poured 400 ml of oil into the volumetric flask, pour the methoxide that had been produced into the volumetric flask, but ensure that none of the methoxide splashes out, as it can be very irritating to your skin. Carry out this process slowly and ensure steady. Now put a lid on the volumetric flask, and once again you have to shake it vigorously, but this time for 20 minutes, as oil is not dissolved readily in methoxide. it can be a difficult process for a thin man like me. After all the constituents have intermixed, leave the volumetric flask aside, and after some time, pour the solution into a beaker. Leave it for about 10 to 12 hours so that layers are formed. The upper layer, which would be lighter in color, would be biodiesel, and the bottom one, the darker one, would be the bioproduct glycerol. Hence, the next step would be to filter off the upper layer, and then we would have biodiesel at hand.